Hello and welcome into this week's ARCA Menards Series Rewind show right here on Racing News Now. As always, I'm your host, Garth Allen. Thank you once again for joining me today. If this is your first time catching a Racing News Now video, consider going down below to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from R&N. On today's ARCA Rewind, the final ARCA Rewind of 2019, we're looking back at the season finale from Friday night. The Kansas 150, 100 laps, 150 miles around the mile-and-a-half Kansas Speedway in Kansas City, Kansas. A lot on the line in this race. Two championship contenders, technically three drivers with a mathematical shot at it. Brett Holmes would have needed a lot of help to get up there into the mix, though. Realistically, it was a battle between Christian Eckes and Michael Self. Christian Eckes came into this race with a 15-point lead over Michael Self, his teammate. Again, this is two Venturini Motorsports teammates battling for the championship, which would be Venturini Motorsports' first championship since 1991. And by the way, link down below in the description if you want to hear from champion car owner Billy Venturini, who won the Owners' Championship this year with the 20 car, as well as the owner of the driver champion as well. That's linked down below in the description. We got an exclusive interview with him at the track as well to talk about that. But it is down there with the post-race interviews as well, so if you don't want to be spoiled on who finished where, don't go down and look at that until we get done with the results. So, again though, not a lot happened in this race aside from championship implications, because it's a mile-and-a-half track that's super aero-dependent, so the racing's hit or miss. But the championship did get super exciting, and it got very dramatic before the green flag. Christian Eckes broke a rocker arm in qualifying. Qualified 11th after practicing in third. He was third fastest in practice, put up an 11th fastest time in qualifying because he broke a rocker arm. Because he broke that rocker arm, he had to swap engines, which meant he had to start from the back. Christian Eckes had to start at the rear of the field, coming into this race with only a 15-point lead. Meanwhile, his teammate Michael Self qualifies outside pole. So we had both championship contenders starting at opposite ends of the field at the start of this race. The drama started from lap 1, and it went through to the end of the race. These two put on the heavyweight battle that I was hoping that they would. This race came down to these two drivers. Yes, Tanner Gray started on the pole, but honestly, Tanner Gray was a non-factor. And everybody else in the field was a non-factor in this race, except for Christian Eckes and Michael Self. They both put on championship-worthy drives in this race. I'm so glad nothing happened to either one of them during this race. Neither one of them got a blown tire, had a mechanical failure, wrecked, whatever. These two got to settle it among themselves, and in the end, had a fantastic battle for this championship. Michael Self, of course, starting from the outside pole, took the lead on lap 1. Self led the first 57 laps in this race. That is important because that means he led the most laps in this race. So that gained him some extra points right there, and could potentially have swung this championship depending on how things finished. The problem was, when Self gave up the lead on lap 57, he gave it up to Christian Eckes. Eckes took the lead on lap 58 and never looked back. Self in pursuit the entire time, but never could quite track down his teammate Eckes after that point. Christian Eckes goes on, wins this race, wins the 2019 ARCA Menards Series Championship. A championship-worthy drive. And I think this right here, and I've been neutral on, for the most part, I've been neutral on whether the playoffs are a good thing or a bad thing in NASCAR. I don't want to really get into that discussion for the most part. I know fans are super divided on that. But I think this right here shows that you can have a fantastic championship battle without a playoff format. You can have it with a classic points format. Are you going to get that every year with a classic points format? No. Look at last year. Sheldon Creed, all he had to do was present his car for practice. He just had to turn one lap in practice, and he had won the championship. By how many points he had over Zane Smith going into this race last year, all Sheldon Creed had to do was turn one lap in practice. That was not the case this year. These two had to fight and claw for this, and they ended up 1-2 in this race, and it shows that with a classic points format, you can still have a fantastic championship battle. Are you going to have that every year? No. And to be honest, I don't want that every year because it makes championship battles like this more special when they happen. Not that the championship battles that we have currently under the playoff systems in the top 3 series aren't special. Because they are exciting, they are special, but they lose a little bit because they happen every year now. It comes down to you have to win at Homestead every year. And it becomes a little repetitive, and you expect that. It's gotten to the point where you expect, okay, these guys are going to have to win at Homestead if they're going to win the championship. Do you have that every year with a classic points format? No. But it makes it more special when something like this happens and we have this huge, just heavyweight fight between Christian Eckes and Michael Self that happens organically and happens naturally. It is fantastic when this kind of thing happens under this kind of a points format. So into the results, as we mentioned, Christian Eckes has won this race. Michael Self finished in the second position. Eckes led 43 laps in this race. Self led the other 57 laps in this race. They were the only 2 lap leaders in this race. Ty Majeski in the 22 car this week for Chad Bryant Racing, his final race of the season with them. Brought it home in a respectable third. Brett Holmes, another solid top 5 for him in fourth. Good run for Travis Braden in this race, as high as second at one point. He really had that 27 car dialed in this race. It didn't quite have what it took to run with the 15 and the 25 most of the race, and but still a very solid run for that team and a good way for them to end out the season. Rest of your top 10, pole sitter Tanner Gray finished in 6th. Drew Dollar there in 7th. He paced the only practice session of the day, was fastest in that practice session. Those DGR Crosley cars put up some really fast times in practice and qualifying. I was really expecting them to put up more of a fight than what they did in this race. 6th and 7th was not where I kind of expected them to land in this race. Haley Deegan in her 6th and final race of the season in ARCA came home in 8th. Joe Graff Jr. in 9th. And Gus Dean returning in that Wintron number 32 car rounded out the top 10. 11th through 20th, Sheldon Creed made his return. Remember, he won this race last year. He stepped into that 28 car for KBR Development with a little bit of help from GMS this week. He brought it home 2 laps down in the 11th position. Harrison Burton in the 20 this week for Venturini. He had a scrape with the wall very early on in this race and never really recovered from that. 3 laps down in the 12th position. Carson Ware in a Rick Ware Racing number 51 car made an entry into this race, and he brought it home 3 laps down in the 13th position. Interesting there, as that was a bit of a late entry, not something I expected. It was a little bit weird to see Rick Ware Racing in ARCA. Not unwanted by any means, but just strange to see. Not a team that I expected to see show up for an ARCA race. Riley Herbst, not a good night for him either. He had a couple scrapes with the wall as well. 5 laps off the pace in 16th for Riley Herbst at the end of the night. Final page down here, 21st, 22nd, Dick Doheny and Wayne Peterson. So that's your results from the Kansas 150. Again, as we mentioned, post-race interviews linked down below in the description. We have 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We have Christian Eckes, Ty Majeski, Brett Holmes, and Travis Braden. Michael Self did not want to talk after that race, which is completely understandable. After losing the championship the way that he did, I don't know that I would have wanted to talk either. So completely understandable, but of course you will notice that is missing down there. We don't have an interview from him. But we do have the other 4 from the top 5, as well as champion car owner Billy Venturini, which we talked to him earlier in the day before the race. So Got lots for you to look at down there in the description, so go check those out if you haven't already. Some great chats with all of them after the race. So let's look at your final point standings of the 2019 season. Of course, Christian Eckes does take home the championship. Incredible that he was able to take home this championship after missing a full race. He didn't do the Spring Salem race because he had food poisoning, and still comes back and wins this championship. Wins 4 races, wins the championship. He closed out this season fantastic. Had a bit of a rough stretch there after Salem. Did not put up some of the best finishes. He did win at Nashville, but there throughout most of the spring and summer, I don't think we saw a lot of great runs out of Christian Eckes. But then he kind of turned it around later in the year, and that's where 3 of his 4 wins came from in that final quarter of the season. He won at Pocono. He won the second race at Pocono. He won DuQuoin, and then wins this race to end out the season in Kansas. So while, again, the start of the season, other than Nashville, may not have been the greatest start for him, he really turned it on there in the latter half of the season, and that kind of propelled him to this championship to dig out of that hole that he kind of set for himself in those first couple races of the season, with missing Salem and then having a terrible race at Talladega out very early in that one and finishing in last. Dug himself quite the hole there 4 races into the season, but obviously was able to climb his way out of it and finish as the champion. Michael Self ends off the season 25 points off the lead there in the second position. Still a fantastic season for Michael Self. Whether he won the championship or not, it was a championship-worthy season and a championship-caliber season for Michael Self, and he should be proud of the effort he and his team put together this season. They really put together a fantastic season. I mean, Self has 4 wins himself this season. It's not like he scooted his way through this season and never found success and wasn't really competitive. I mean, he did a lot this year that he and a lot of other people said that he couldn't. He won on short tracks. He won on a dirt track. So he proved that he could do a lot this season. And I really, really hope that we continue to see Michael Self driving a race car into the future. As of right now, from what I'm hearing, he has nothing lined up for next season whatsoever. And that's really disappointing because I think Michael Self is one of the most talented drivers that we've seen come into this sport in a long time. And it would be a shame if he just kind of faded away like that. Because I think he has real, true potential in this sport. And, he's done a lot in ARCA at this point, but I think there's a lot more he can do in his career if it were to continue. And I would hate to see it end like this in kind of a bitter defeat like this in a season that a lot of other years probably would have ended in a championship had it not been for the fantastic run that Christian Eckes went on this season. Michael's a great guy. He's a great driver, and I really hope we continue to see him in this sport a long time into the future. Brett Holmes ended the season there in the 3rd position. Strong run for him. Best points finish of his career in the ARCA Menards Series there. 165 points off the lead to end the season. Very strong season for him. Something he can hang his hat on. 7 top 5s, 7 top 5s, 17 top 10s this season. So a very strong, consistent season for Brett Holmes. Unfortunately, was not able to pick up that first ARCA victory this season, but still a lot of great runs out of that 23 team. Travis Braden, a strong year for him as well, with 2 top 5s and 15 top 10s. Very strong, consistent season for that 27 team as well. Definitely something they can hang their hat on, having improved this season and continuing to trudge forward. Joe Graff Jr. there in 5th, your other full-time driver running for the championship this season. A lot of incidents and bad luck happening to him, and unfortunately wasn't really in contention in the latter points of the season for this championship, but still saw some good runs out of him this season. He ends the season 435 points off of the lead. 1 top 5, 12 top 10s for Joe Graf Jr. this season. Tommy Vi Jr. there in 6th. He does pick up the Rookie of the Year this season with Christian Eckes winning the championship. ARCA has a rule that if the highest finishing rookie wins the championship, they can't win the championship and Rookie of the Year, which I'm going to be honest is kind of a weird rule. But because Christian Eckes was the highest finishing rookie, but he won the championship, he does not win Rookie of the Year, so it goes to Tommy Vi Jr. So Tommy Vi Jr., 6th in points, respectable season out of him. Only 1 top 10 on the season, but did run every race, and solidly consistent season for Tommy Vi Jr. And then down here, we got some part-timers down here at the bottom. Tim Richmond, Corey Heim, Chandler Smith. Good seasons out of both Corey Heim and Chandler Smith. Corey Heim not able to pick up his first win yet this season, but I think we're going to see some wins out of Corey Heim in 2020. He had 8 top 5s and 12 top 10s this season. And, of course, Chandler Smith had just an amazing year. 5 wins for Chandler Smith to go along with 8 top 5s and 10 top 10s. So, really good season there for Chandler Smith. A little bit inconsistent, and that's why he sits here below Corey Heim in points even with 5 wins, but still a really good season for Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith kind of had one of those seasons where if he didn't win or finish in the top 5, he was probably somewhere near the back. It was one of those kind of seasons, and not necessarily of his own doing, just mechanical failures here and there, caught up in somebody else's mess, but showed speed all season long. Chandler Smith, what we've become accustomed to. If he's in the race, you got to look at him as one of the favorites to win. But that is your final point standings for the 2019 ARCA Menards Series, and that'll do it for the final ARCA Menards Series rewind show of 2019. Like I said, post-race interviews with Christian Eckes, Ty Majeski, Brett Holmes, and Travis Braden, all linked down below in the description, as well as a champion owner interview with Billy Venturini, so go check those out if you haven't already. Some great thoughts from them down there. It was interesting because if you'll notice when you watch those 3rd through 5th interviews from pit road, it was very, very windy after the race. You can hear a lot of wind, and I do apologize for that. There are points where it might be a little hard to hear, just working with what we got here, and I do apologize for that. And actually, as you'll notice, the Christian Eckes interview isn't even at the track. It was recorded this morning before I left the hotel, because we did an interview with Christian after Victory Lane and everything got done last night. Actually walked with him from Victory Lane back to his hauler and just did the interview walking with him like that. The wind was so bad in that. Like, half of that interview, you can't hear anything except wind. It was unsalvageable. Like, couldn't do anything with it. So Christian was gracious enough to call this morning and re-record that, and I really do appreciate that out of Christian. Christian's always good to us and gives us the time of day anytime we need it, so I really do appreciate that out of Christian. But so yeah, those are down in the description if you haven't seen them already. Cup Rewind coming up tomorrow night for their race, their playoff race here in Kansas as well. Lots on the line in that one, of course, with the playoffs. Not going to be able to do an Xfinity Rewind, just not going to have the time for it, but oh boy, Brandon Jones getting his first win in that one. That was quite the story in that one. So lots happening this weekend from Kansas. Lots of storylines happening from the mile and a half at Kansas. So if you haven't done it already, you need to go down below, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. While you're down there, why don't you hit that big thumbs up button if you like the video. It is much appreciated when you do. But at that, this has been the final ARCA Menards Series Rewind show of 2019. As always, I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.